Okay. On the cultural question, we have another speaker. You might recognize her voice from the recent interview. Cloret Ferguson, on the issue of culture, in particular, Friedrich Schiller.
I think you better save that applause until you hear what I have to say. So we have very little time, but I think it's important to redirect to what Ben raised. And this goes also with why we're called the Schiller Institute. And that is Mrs. Helga Zepp-LaRouche's wise wisdom. Schiller is known as the poet of freedom, and he's known as the poet of freedom because he, out of all dramatists and artists, decided that he was going to address that which actually can free us from the internal shackles that prevent us from acting and grasping these new opportunities or opportunities that we encounter in our lives. People may wonder why the Schiller Institute and the speakers here today relied a lot on using the words of the great thinkers directly with you. And I think there are two reasons, and I'll try to get to this succinctly, but also I just want you to consider, because I don't think that what I have to say is going to be dealt with in the few minutes that I'm allowed to give these remarks. But it's something I hope that every person here today will take away and pursue investigation of. My husband always said, you know, if you want to fool Americans and you want to keep Americans in the dark, how do you do that? And he said, put it in a book, because Americans don't read anymore. You know, if you want to hide something, just put it in a book. No one's ever going to open it. No one's ever going to bother to sit down and start to read. And on that point, there's a little aside. A longtime friend of mine, someone who I worked with for many years, this person came to my home, and she saw I had all these books, like, you know, bookcases everywhere. She goes, don't you know books are outdated? Why do you have all of these stupid books? People don't read books anymore, she says. So, you know, what I have to say in a way is, might be a bit painful, but I want to use the words of Friedrich Schiller, and hopefully you'll go and investigate and read some of his writings. Some of those books we have translated into English because Schiller is a German poet, and you may know him as the person who wrote a song which the civil rights movement, the people who were bringing down the Berlin Wall all sang, and that's what we call the Ode to Joy. You know, Freude schöne guter Funken, taucht aus Elysium, wir betreten Feuertunken, himmlisch dein Heiligtum. You heard that song. Beethoven set that poem to music. So let me go back to Schiller, because Schiller addressed this whole question of how do we change, and it means the vehicle that he said allows us to cut to the chase, to put it in Americanese, is classical culture. And the point is that we have a unifying commonality among us all human beings. And that commonality lies in the universality of what makes us not talking beasts. So let me just start out with Schiller's comments on the failed French Revolution, because those remarks resonate with the predicament that we're in today. When at that time, the population of France were faced with replicating what had happened here in America in the American Revolution, but they did not rise to that occasion. But Schiller says, look, how has it come to pass that we are still barbarians? Through his actions, man portrays himself. And what an awful form do we see depicted in our present day drama. Here, brutalization, there, decadence, the two extremes of human corruption, and both united in one age of history. In the lower and more numerous classes, we see raw, lawless impulses unleashed after all bands of civil order have been dissolved, rushing with ungovernable impetuosity toward bestial satiation, its rudder gone. Our society, instead of speeding upwards into organic life, is relapsing back into the inorganic domain. On the other side, the civilized classes present us with an even more detestable spectacle of decadence and depravity of character, which disgusts us all the more because it feeds upon the culture itself. I no longer remember which ancient or modern philosopher remarked that the nobler person is all the more abhorrent in his self-destruction. But one will find is true in the moral realm as well. From the savage run amok, there emerges a madman. From the disciple of art, a worthless nothing. Now, unlike so-called artists today, Schiller goes at the underlying root cause of, how we can address this. And as I alluded to, he thinks that the way that we can begin to solve these problems is through the science of not being a jerk. He didn't say that, but those are my words about how Schiller takes you through this process. He says, look, there's a science to not being a jerk. And in his writings, he very patiently brings you along so that over time, you begin to look in the mirror, to see yourself as others see you. And this is a very difficult thing for Americans, very proud people. We all come from all different parts of the world. America's the melting pot. But Americans have this, I'm the man, we're American. We like everything big, steaks, a lot of other things that we should reconsider. But anyways, getting back to the point, Schiller says, look, the instrument to not be a jerk is classical art. And there's two other statements, and I hope this will prick your interest so that you go and read the translations of his work and start to work on this science of not being a jerk. So I have two other quotes, and then I'll sit down. He says, look, how does classical art transform the inner man? He says, look, these well springs open up to us in their immortal exemplars. Art, as well as science, is absolved from everything based on mere sense experience and imposed by human convention, and both enjoy absolute immunity from arbitrariness of men. So we have a commonality. This commonality transcends our social status. It transcends our religious practices. It transcends our political persuasions, transcends our language groups, and the particular nationalities we come from. And what is it, you have to ask yourself, what is it that unites us? There is a unifying principle, and that unifying principle transcends all of these particulars. And this last statement from Schiller, I think if you begin to examine that, will give you the direction towards practicing the science of not being a jerk. So I'm going to read that and then I'll sit down. He says, give then I shall reply to the young friend of truth and beauty who wants to learn from me how he can satisfy the noble impulse in his breast in the face of all the opposition in his century. Give the world on which you are acting the direction towards the good, and the quiet rhythm of the time will bring about its development. You have given it this direction. If by your teaching you elevate its thoughts to the necessary and the eternal, if by your actions or your creations you transform the necessary and eternal into the object of its impulses, the fabric of error and lawlessness will fall. It must fall. It has already fallen as soon as you are certain that it is leaning over. But it must lean in the inner. I'll say that again. But it must lean in the inner, not merely in the outward man. In the modest stillness of your heart, you must cherish victorious truth. Display it from within yourself in beauty, so that not merely thought may pay homage to it, but sense too may lay loving hold on its appearance. And lest by any chance you may receive the pattern you are to give it from actuality, do not dare to enter its doubtful society until you are assured of an ideal following in your heart.